Welcome to Manager Monday. My name is Wendy Christensen, and today we're going to have TWC talking to us about 21-22 HSE Voucher Program. With me today as a co-host is Dr. Olga Escamilla. So we're going to get started here. We have Maria Morrow from TWC. She's a program specialist, and with her will be Fabiana Ramirez. And then we're going to have a special guest later on. We're going to have Michelle Barone from Education Service Center Region 20.
Thank you for joining us to talk about our high school equivalency vouchers for program year 21-22. I know that y'all have been anxiously awaiting these to come out, and we have a lot to cover, so we're going to get right into it. Today, Fabiana Ramirez is going to go over some background on policy for the HSE vouchers, and I'm going to go over what's the same, some things that are different, as well as show you the new and improved HSE voucher tracker that Christine Long has created for us. And then finally, we'll review some of the best practices that Region 20 used last year with Michelle and Cindy. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. After this webinar, you will be able to recall and apply the PY 21-22 updates in policy. You'll be able to create necessary documents that will include the minimum required information, explain what must be done when distributing a voucher, utilize the program year 21-22 HSE voucher tracker, and identify what information should be entered in Teams. And now I am going to hand things over to Fabiana, who is going to provide us some background on the HSE voucher policy. Fabiana, whenever you're ready.
Hello, and as Maria said, I'm Fabiana Ramirez, and I'm a policy analyst here at TWC's AEL State Office. So in these next couple of slides, I just wanted to provide you with the background and the why we got this high school equivalency subsidy program, just so you have a better understanding as we get into the policy on how to implement this. So back in 2019, summer 2019, the Texas legislature passed House Bill 3, which included some new legislation on the creation of a high school equivalency subsidy program. And that was under Education Code section 48.302. And I think on the screen here, you'll see a screenshot of what that education code looks like. So this is statute, and this is basically law now. So you'll see a screenshot, and what that says in short is the following. The Texas Education Agency and the Texas Workforce Commission will enter into a memorandum of understanding so that the Texas Education Agency will transfer funds to the TWC in order to subsidize high school equivalency exams. And it specifies for individuals which are 21 years and older. And it also says here that TWC must adopt rules. And what they mean by rules are the Texas Administrative Code rules, so state policy, which governs this program, to implement the subsidy program. So I just wanted to flag here that this is the statute on why and how we got this program. And so just as we're learning more about the policy and eligibility requirements, I just want to point out, the 21 years of age and older, that's in statute. So that is by law, the one eligibility requirement. So this program was created back in 2019. And so at that time, the Texas Workforce Commission and Texas Education Agency entered into an interagency contract. And then TWC adopted rules. Again, all this is in statute. We were required by law to do this. And so you'll see that here in the last bullet on your screen, the Chapter 805, Subchapter E, High School Equivalency Subsidy Program. So those rules outline more detail on the requirements for how TWC must implement this program. Okay, so fast forward to a couple of years later. So more recently, last summer of 2021, during the 87 Texas Legislature regular session, House Bill 1525 was passed. And what that did was make just slight amendments to this education code on here, but the program itself remained intact. So there was just a couple of words that were changed and removed, but the subsidy program remained intact. And so that is why today we're talking about how we're going to implement this, and thanks to the legislature, it continues. So right now, Texas Workforce Commission and TA, we have an interagency contract. And in that contract, the TEA must transfer or may transfer, up to $750,000 each fiscal year for the 2021 to 2023 biennium. So when we talk about how much we have for this program, it is all laid out in that interagency contract. And I'll also add here that the TWC, we have a executed contract with GED Testing Center. And the reason for that is the GED Testing Center is the only high school equivalency exam vendor approved by the State Board of Education to operate in Texas. So with those kind of foundational understandings of, where this program came from, I just wanted that kind of out there. There's the statute, there's the rules, and now we'll get into the letter. So now for TWC's policy on how you all AEL providers must implement this program. So we just recapped, there's the Texas statute, which is the law. Then there's the rules, which kind of further govern this program. And now we share the policy for this on how we get more detailed on how you will implement this program here in this AEL policy letter. So that is AEL letter 0621. Titled High School Equivalency Subsidy Program for this program year 2021 to 2022. So what this does is a few things. It summarizes the background of this program. You'll see on the screen kind of a screenshot of the first page of the letter. Background, it summarizes everything we just discussed in the previous slide. And it also offers the policy requirements on how programs must implement this program. So there are definitions for the terms. So there's 4 terms that are bolded. If you're looking at the letter right now, I believe it's on page 2. There are the terms high school equivalency voucher tracker, subsidy, subsidy recipient, and voucher. And so we're very specific on how those are defined within the context of this subsidy program. And for those of you who are not as familiar with AEL letters, just to walk you through the letter, this letter specifically is organized by policy information. So you'll see kind of a bulleted list of how we organized it just for easy reference. So there's initial voucher distribution, high school equivalency, subsidy program implementation, test readiness. So you'll note that as you are looking through this letter, bold kind of subheaders for each section. And also, as you're reviewing this policy letter, there are 2 acronyms used throughout. Those are NLF and LF. And so what those mean are the following. NLF means no local flexibility. So that should be a flag for everyone that this is what you are required to do. This is a requirement. There's no local flexibility. So highlight that. And LF stands for local flexibility. So where our programs are not required to do something, but there's additional flexibility for you to choose to implement this program a certain way should you choose to. Again, it's not a requirement, but we'll flag that as local flexibility. So that is all I have. That in a small nutshell for a big program, the background for the subsidy program. Now, Maria will walk you through some of those main policy points that are outlined in this letter. And thank you for joining. Maria.
Thank you, Fabiana. So in the next few slides, we're going to go over some important information from AEL letter 0621. I'll review some of the things that are the same, point out some things that are different, and highlight some things to remember when distributing a voucher. We'll then briefly take some questions, if there are any at that point, before moving on to the new voucher tracker. Okay, so let's review some important things that are the same. So first, for the HSE vouchers, the eligibility remains the same. The individual must be a Texas resident, at least 21 years of age or older, lack a high school diploma or its equivalent, and be determined HSE test ready. AEL grantees must prioritize the distribution of HSE vouchers to current AEL participants and to former AEL participants within 365 days of their exit. AEL participants include those enrolled in state leadership funded initiatives such as Accelerate Texas and Ability to Benefit. So AEL grantees may collaborate with state leadership funded AEL program partners to distribute vouchers to AEL participants in those programs. But it's also important to remember that someone that is a non-AEL participant who is otherwise eligible can also receive a voucher. Second, you must have access to GED Manager. And third, AEL grantees must have a process to distribute the HSE subsidy to both eligible AEL and non-AEL participants, which should include collection of the minimum information needed to create a student record in Teams. This process is one of the required elements that must be outlined in your standard operating procedure, along with the other elements listed here. And I'm not going to read them all out. You can check them out with a copy from this PowerPoint or also in the letter. So let's take a look at what's new. AEL grantees must develop a form for each subsidy recipient to sign, acknowledging what the recipient must do in order to participate in the HSE subsidy program. At a minimum, the form must state that the subsidy recipient agrees to use the voucher only for themselves. Notify the grantee if he or she is receiving vouchers from other programs, that they will enter the Teams ID into his or her GED account, and give the AEL grantee permission to view testing information. AEL grantees must still verify that the recipient has a government-issued photo ID and proof of residency. However, TEA's HSE test taker requirements now state that expired photo IDs are not accepted. So you want to make sure that anyone you provide a voucher to has a current government-issued photo ID. If an individual does not have the required documentation for taking an HSE exam as determined by TEA, then that individual is not eligible to receive an HSE voucher. So if they provide you with an expired ID, and they say they don't have any other documentation, you probably should recommend that they go get a current ID, update their driver's license or state ID or whatever government issued photo ID that they have so that they can come back and then receive a voucher. Once you have issued a voucher, the recipient's AEL instructor or another assigned staff member must help the recipient register for the test online. This was highly recommended last program year, but it is a requirement this year. The staff member must ensure that the test is scheduled within 30 days based on the availability of test dates, and that the unique Teams ID is entered into the appropriate field when registering for the test. Something else you want to make sure of is that the AEL grantee was given permission to view the test information in the GED account. Finally, once a recipient has taken their scheduled test, the voucher is considered redeemed. It is important to know that if a recipient is a no-show for a scheduled test, then the voucher code is also considered redeemed and will count toward the subsidy amount. So if you schedule the test and they don't show up on their testing date, it's the voucher is still redeemed. The only way it's not going to be considered redeemed is if the GED center itself has to cancel testing. Like if they close their center or something and they say we have to cancel the testing for that date, then it can be rescheduled and it's not considered redeemed. Otherwise, it is considered redeemed. Now let's go over some additional information to remember when distributing the vouchers. Before distributing a voucher to a subsidy recipient, grantees must ensure that the recipient is HSE test ready by using an assessment tool, such as the GED Ready Practice Test. For retake tests, you want to confirm that the recipient is eligible to take the GED test according to the vendor's retest policies. The director or a designated staff member must confirm the following elements listed here before approving the release of a voucher to a subsidy recipient: that they are eligible, if applicable, the recipient's ability to retest. The recipient has not been given vouchers exceeding the value of a subsidy, either from the same program or another program, including previous program years. The recipient has a GED account and has included his or her Teams ID number on the account. The AEL director or designated staff member must then enter the following in Teams: the assigned GED voucher code in the support services field page and the assigned team's ID and the GED voucher code given to the subsidy recipient in the HSE voucher tracker. Okay, do we have any questions before we move on?
Yes, we have a couple questions, Maria. So the first one, if a student is a resident but still has an out-of-state ID, can they still use this?
That's a good question. I know they need to show proof of residency and they have to have a current government issued ID. Fabiana, are you still on here? Can you?
Sure, that's a good question. So in the letter, and I can point to you where we outlined this. So it's on page 5. If you look at page 5 of the letter, there's a section there that says photo ID and Texas residency. And to be specific, that begins on line 15. So we steer our programs to TEA's high school equivalency test taker requirements page. So that is the page where, we defer to the TEA for how they define residency, because they are the overseeing agency for who can take a high school equivalency exam and what sorts of ID requirements are needed. So I would refer you to that webpage to get your answer for that.
And so, Fabiana, will that page also show what exactly would be a valid proof to show?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So we do provide, and TEA is very good about providing updated information and policy on their TextChase webpage, which is why we linked you all there, because they do such a good job. And because, they are the overseeing agency for what exams can be used and how to get your TextChase.
Okay.
But if you look at that webpage, it's organized as follows. There's high school equivalency test requirements. So it defines, what is a government issued ID, and it flags here. And I think Maria just covered this, there is no allowance for expired ID. So that is a new requirement from the TEA. So as of June 1st of last year, expired IDs are no longer accepted. And then it provides a bulleted list of what can be used as proof of residency. And currently, and again, I'll defer you to that web page in case they update this, but currently they provide Texas driver's license, a utility bill showing the Texas address, or a bank statement showing the Texas address. But that's a very good question. So I would check that page in case they provide any new information.
Because proof of residency and ID are separate issues, separate things. And then some students have a passport, but not a driver's license that has their Texas address. Is that acceptable? Is that listed on the?
I believe a passport is an accepted government issued ID.
Yeah.
But again, I'd refer you to that webpage. Sorry, it's Fabiana again, because the government issued ID is separate from the proof of residency. So I would just confirm with the documentation the student has does meet the TEA's requirement for, taking the test.
Okay. Can they still receive additional private grant vouchers after using the TEA limited number of vouchers? And then a follow-up is, how do we know if a participant has been given a voucher from another provider? Are those things that will be addressed later?
So you should be able to see if they've been given a voucher from another provider in Teams. But as far as like another private entity, like let's say you're at a college and the college also provides, vouchers. We can only give them up to 5. And then if they use all of ours, if they want to use some from the college, that's, you would then have to defer to the college's, rules as far as them being eligible and having received assistance from us.
Okay. And then if the student got a HiSET voucher last year but didn't finish and has to start over, do the HiSET vouchers count towards their total?
Yeah, I meant the dollar limit. If
the dollar limit.
Let's say I took 2 HiSET tests, do those count against me for my total?
That's a good question, Susan. And so what the law, and again, that is the Texas Education Code, that screenshot we all saw a few slides ago. What the law provides is that this subsidy is for the cost of an exam. So that would be taken into consideration, which is why we, put such a stress on tracking and putting in teams, how many vouchers have been used. So if a student was given vouchers last program year, those would count towards, the subsidy program amount.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, and again, because what the law says is a subsidy not to exceed the cost of an exam for an individual 21 years and older. So we need to just make sure that we are doing our due diligence. It's not program year to program year. It's, overall. But thanks, that's a good clarification. I'm sure, others had the same question.
I'm assuming TEA has a list and had said could be and doesn't address passport for residency.
Correct. They will still need to show proof of residency if they're going to use a passport as their government issued ID.
And then I don't know if you addressed this or not because I was reading questions. Is the maximum value of the subsidy lifetime or per program year?
What we see in statute is it cannot exceed the cost of an exam. This is not program year to program year. And one thing I'd like to say about that is that I'd urge you again to look at the TEA Text Chase webpage because they have a good chart on GED's test, which includes retakes. So as you're giving vouchers to students, there's policies related to retake. So if a student has, failed a test a couple of times, to make sure you're giving them a voucher, knowing that they could actually take that test because there are certain retest policies and there's different costs for retest. So all that you should consider as you're giving those vouchers out.
So if a student doesn't meet the 365 days of leaving the program, would he or she meet the other eligible participant criteria?
Yes, as long as they meet the other eligibility requirements, being at least 21 years of age, lack a HSE, and a Texas resident. We want to give priority to those who are in our program or, have exited within the past year. We want to give them priority, but, somebody that is otherwise eligible can receive a voucher.
Okay. And then Karen mentioned, so there are only 3 options for residency: driver's license, bank, or utilities. Not trying to ask over and over, but that could be is not clear. And so she just wanted to verify the 3 choices.
Like Fabiana said, I would just refer to that website. She probably just mentioned those 3 because that's what, she was seeing real quick from the website.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for your questions. We'll have an opportunity for more questions later on. So before I show you the new voucher tracker, let's review the following. First, what is the HSE voucher tracker? Well, it is the Microsoft Excel reporting tool that grantees use to track HSE vouchers released by TWC to the grantee for subsidy recipients. Although TWC, we are not going to require you guys to turn these trackers in on the 15th of every month. And although we will no longer require that, just be aware that TWC staff can ask for the voucher tracker at any time. So it's important to utilize the tracker and keep it up to date. Using the HSE voucher tracker will help grantees be aware of previous vouchers redeemed by a subsidy recipient to ensure that the amount given to that recipient does not exceed the cost of an exam. AEL grantees may request additional vouchers once they have used 70% of the initial voucher allotment. This is a good example where TWC will ask for a copy of the voucher tracker. So now I'm going to bring up the voucher tracker. So this is the new HSE voucher tracker. And as you can see already, this looks a lot simpler than the one you got last year. And so I think that you guys are really going to like this one. And you're able to filter it for many different ways for however you need to find the information. It is important to point out here, I'm not sure if you really can see the bottom down here, but the first slide that we're on here shows this is online. So if this is for OP, online proctoring, if you give them a voucher for online proctoring, it's going to be on this first tab. The second tab is going to be if they go to a specific center on site. Okay, as you can see here, it says voucher in-person testing, and this is there's two different tabs for in-person testing. You've got regular, and then you have also retake. And again, it's because the prices are different. So what I like about this is you can filter it many different ways. So let's say you're like, okay, I want to know how many vouchers has Tom Holland received, right? And I would recommend going by, of course, participant team's ID. And we can go in here and we can check. And his is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and it's going to show me all of the vouchers that he's received, and he has received 4 regular vouchers, right? Another thing I was thinking of was, let's say something happened in Teams and you weren't able to put the information into Teams. You weren't able to log it into Teams like you wanted to right away. You can go back and make sure, you're like, oh, there was a glitch that happened in Teams. I wasn't able to enter a voucher, but I want to make sure that all of the vouchers I entered for, January are in there. And you can check that. See, and it's going to give you all the vouchers that were handed out in January, and you can go back and check that with Teams against Teams and make sure that you got the information in there like you were supposed to. Another thing that's nice on here, and y'all want to thank Michelle for this because she brought it up. Originally, we did not have the location site column on here. So for all of your larger and consortia programs, again, you can thank Michelle from Region 20 for this. She mentioned that this would be really helpful for her because she likes to see how many were given out at a certain location. So again, if you want to be able to do that as well, and let's say we want to know how many have been given out at the Queens location. Again, you can filter it just like that. So hopefully you find this voucher tracker as exciting as I do, and I hope that you guys will utilize it and be able to find many different ways to help with your tracking and information that you need. Do we have any questions on the voucher tracker before I move on?
We just had one question come in. Is that the date they are distributed or the day the student takes the test?
So we have, sorry, I should have moved this over some. So you have when it was issued, that's, when you're giving them the voucher is going to be column G, and then when it's redeemed is going to be column H. So you have both of them on there.
Okay. And then Randy asked, do we need to divide them between online tests and in-person tests or just make a note?
So yes, so again, the first tab is going to be online proctored, and then the second and third tab are in person. And again, that's because the prices are different between online proctored tests and then the in-person tests. And with the in-person test, you have a different tab for the regular vouchers and the retake vouchers.
Okay, thank you. We'll be able to move over the current tracker data.
Sure. Yeah, you can bring over the information to this tracker. That's actually a really good idea, so that you can get the full, see how many you've given for each participant. Okay.
And then do the vouchers expire?
Yes, they will have an expiration date. And right now in the letter, it has an expiration date of August 31st this year. If that changes, we will let you guys know as soon as possible and we'll update the letter.
Okay. Okay, that's it for now.
Okay, great. All right. So moving on. Next, we're going to talk about entering stuff into Teams. Since TWC is not requiring grantees to submit the voucher tracker monthly, TWC will be relying on information entered in Teams to collect data. However, like I mentioned earlier, we can ask for the voucher tracker at any time. So more importantly than the tracker, you want to make sure that you get the information entered into Teams. As mentioned previously, AEL grantees must have a process to distribute the HSE subsidy to both eligible AEL and non-AEL participants, which should include collection of the minimum information needed to create a student record in Teams. Grantees must enter all subsidy recipients, including non-AEL participants, into teams to create a unique Teams ID, which must be used for HSE voucher tracking purposes and for registering the student for the GED test. Grantees must enter the voucher code and a comment on the type of GED test for which the voucher was redeemed for any subsidy recipient. These entries are made on the support services page in the participants record in Teams. And I'm going to bring up Teams right now live. I'm going to bring up the training environment here. There we go. Then we're going to go to participants, and I'm going to use Mr. Ghibli Tokyo here. So again, it's going to be under support services. So you'd click on support services and you can see that Ghibli's already been taking some tests. He was issued a voucher on January 11th, and he was given a full voucher. Again, you do have to enter a comment in here. So when you're doing this, you'll see here that a note was entered and 2 vouchers were entered, were given on this date. There was a regular voucher given, and then a retake voucher was given. Okay, so, and you guys have local flexibility on how you want your staff to put in the comments. It's important to note that, so here you'll see our initials. Veronica had entered this one. I cannot go in and change Veronica's comment. Only she can do that, but I can go in and change any comments that I have entered. So if we want to provide another voucher, we're going to add support service. The start date is going to be the date that you're issuing the voucher. So let's say we're issuing another voucher today. What is the support service type? This has to be filled out. So we're going to choose HSE voucher. Now, again, we can issue up to 5 voucher codes. You can issue up to 5 of them all in one day. You'll notice that he's already been issued 3 of them, right? 2 regular and a retake. But that doesn't mean because he's been issued 2 regular and a retake, I'm going to say, okay, well, I'm issuing the 4th one down here. This is the first one that I'm giving out on this date. So you enter the voucher code here. Okay, and I'm just going to make up, let's see. I'm going to save changes, and I forgot to put a comment, right? Which we're not supposed to do. So I can go back in, and again, since I'm the one who did this, I can put in the comments that, he was. And let's see, what's another test? Do they take one for language, right? Okay. And then if we go back to the support services page, you'll see there's my comments been put in there. He's been issued another voucher and on what date. Okay.
Can the vouchers be scheduled by August 31st and then taken within 30 days, or do they need to all be taken by the 31st of August?
I believe they need to be issued and the test scheduled within 30 days.
Okay. So if none of the vouchers were added in Teams last year as support with last year's vouchers, do we add them this year?
That's a good question. I would say yes, but I'm going to defer to Fabiana.
Yeah, I don't think we address that in the letter. I think that would be a good practice just to help you moving forward, making sure that the full subsidy does not exceed that exam cost. So that might be a good thing to do. It's not a requirement, but it will definitely help you track moving forward and making sure that you're not, exceeding that cost. I will add, this letter does provide that after you get this initial group of vouchers, you can request more. So once you're noticing you're about okay, I'm about 70%, I'm almost done with my 70% use my vouchers. I'm going to need more. You're going to have to submit a request for that to us. And I think it would be a good, just kind of best practice to show this is how we're ensuring that these vouchers are being tracked and reconciled and we have good oversight. And you could show that, as proof, we went back and added some vouchers that were used last year. So it's not specifically addressed in the letter, but I would say that would be a good practice and definitely ensures the accountability there.
Okay, and then has Teams been fixed with the ineligibility message that we get if a voucher is given to a participant with a high school diploma or its equivalency from outside the US?
I will have to get back to you on that. Yeah, let me get back to you on that. I don't want to say yes or no.
Okay. And then is there a difference between regular voucher and full voucher as given in the example?
No, I believe it's just how you want the language you want to use. My preference would be to use the, regular voucher so that, because on the tracker, it says regular and retake, or even like OP, if you want to even further distinguish, if it's an online proctoring voucher that you're giving. Again, you guys are given local flexibility in how you want your staff to comment. Put what you want them to put in the comments area. But I figure the more information, the better.
Okay, and then
Add to that, and this is all the letter as well, the different vouchers have different costs. So online proctored is the most expensive option. So if you are entering that information in Teams, it would just be good to know as you're, tracking this, I would say, put online proctored in the notes because that is a different cost from computer-based, regular and computer-based, or just retake.
okay, and I have two more questions. Does the grantee enter this information into Teams? And what if a subrecipient issues the voucher? Will the subrecipient enter the support services information into Teams, or is it the grantee who does it?
So that's going to be up to you guys because it needs to be, an assigned staff specific person that's entering it. It says the director or, assigned staff
Okay,
needs to enter that.
okay. And will Teams allow previous year date? I guess to enter stuff into Teams, will they allow previous year date when you were saying before to go ahead and update?
Yes, it should. And if it's not, please let us know right away.
And
Okay.
Maria, I have an update on the Teams. We are aware of the HSE from out of the country, and that is going to be in the recent upcoming team release. So yeah, that's on the mend to be fixed as well.
Thank you, Veronica. Okay, so now we're going to move on, and our final speaker today is Michelle from Region 20, and she's also brought along Cindy. And before they come on, I just want to brag on Region 20 and applaud them for redeeming the most HSE vouchers last program year. Yay, congratulations. So that's part of the reason I invited her today to share some of their best practices that help them redeem so many vouchers. So Michelle, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Maria. So I just want to share a little bit about how we redeemed so many vouchers this last year. It really took a group effort, and it wasn't just the consortium team that came up with what is the process going to look like, how are they going to be distributed, how are we going to market them. It was really a two-level process, and when we created our SOP, it was the consortium team and our 8 service providers. We met as a group at one of our monthly consortium meetings, and we kind of hashed out what is the process going to look like so that everybody is on the same page. There's a process that's seamless, that's consistent. So that is how it started. And then we created electronic flyers that were sent out to the community so that they could then forward the flyers through their listserv. And we sent the electronic flyers to the consortium, the service providers as well, so that they could share them. And the electronic flyer basically shared, like, this is an opportunity that is not only for our AEL students, but it's also for the community. So it was this is a win-win for everybody, not just our adult ed students. And then we posted everything on our website. So it was a huge announcement of this is come to one of our providers. We will offer you a free HSE voucher. And so that was really helpful. We also targeted Facebook groups. So like, it wasn't just because some programs can't have Facebook groups or Facebook pages. So we on our own personally would send out information to targeted Facebook groups so that some of them even had like 70,000 Facebook users. So we use social media a lot to advertise and promote the HSE vouchers throughout the city. And another thing that we considered were what were the other service providers doing at their level. So one example that we wanted to share with you was Northeast ISD's GED Ready Pretest Day. And Cindy's going to talk a little bit about that because she was part of that process.
So I'm going to tell you about our GED Ready Pretest Day. We had actually a couple of these in last program year to encourage our HSE students to get in there and take a test. So we scheduled the test and had times and a sign up using Calendly that students could make an appointment to come and take their test. Sometimes this would be during their class time. And so their teachers came to the GED Ready Pretest Day in person and met them there. And so every student in any of our HSE classes, they were all invited to come to our GED Ready Pretest Day, even if it was during their class time. We held this in a computer lab setting where we had socially distanced labs, computer lab stations, and every student was assigned to a computer. When they checked in, we looked at their GED account to make sure that their Teams ID was already there and that they had chosen Northeast ISD as their test prep center so we could see their results. And then our program had purchased the GED Ready vouchers that we had ready for them to take that test. When they finished their test, they came to a station to get their result. And if they were GED Ready green, then we sent them to another station to immediately get their voucher and make their appointment for testing right there and then. So the person who was manning that station had all of the eligibility requirements and access to Teams to check them and make sure that they were eligible. If they weren't eligible for one of the TWC vouchers, we had privately purchased vouchers that were available for students that were maybe too young for the TWC voucher. So everybody who got GED Ready green was able to get a voucher and schedule their test right on that day. If they got yellow or red, they went to a different station and we printed out for them a copy of their study plan that was linked to the study material that they were using. We printed out 2 copies, one for the student and one for their instructor, so they could have some targeted information about what they still needed to work on in order to pass their GED Ready test on their next try. And so that's how we worked it.
And Northeast, I'll just have to mention that Northeast ISD was our top performer. They were the ones that had the most HSE vouchers.
Karen says, excellent process.
Okay, yeah, definitely. So now moving on, we're going to go pretty quickly through testing your knowledge and see how much you guys retained. Right, so first question, what is the HSE voucher tracker? Is it a reporting tool that keeps track of the HSE voucher recipients' whereabouts? Is it a reporting tool that grantees use to track HSE vouchers released by TWC to the grantee for subsidy recipients? C, a reporting tool that keeps track of which testing center a recipient used? Or is it D, a microchip that can sense when a recipient is cheating? Awesome. Can't fool you guys, can I? All right. Next question. An individual is eligible if he or she meets all the following except being a Texas resident, being 21 years of age or older, lacking a high school diploma or its equivalent, planning on attending post-secondary training, or determined to be HSE test ready. So
D is the answer of choice there.
all righty. That is correct. Next one, a subsidy, true or false? A subsidy recipient can only be a current AEL participant or former AEL participant within 365 days of their exit.
I'm getting a mixture here. B, false. A couple say A, so maybe have to discuss this one.
Okay, so the answer is false. So we do want to give preference. We want to give preference to AEL participants and former AEL participants that have exited within 365 days, but a non-AEL participant who is otherwise eligible can receive the subsidy. All right, next one. Following TEA's HSE test taker requirements, what are two requirements AEL grantees must verify? That the person has a government issued ID and proof of residency, that they have a school ID and a number 2 pencil, or that they have a government issued ID and a Teams ID, or that they have 2 forms of ID and transportation to the testing center.
Seeing a lot of A's come in.
Good, that is the correct answer. And just remember, an expired ID is not accepted, and they'll have to get some form of current identification before they can be issued a voucher. The next one, which of the following is not required to be on the HSE voucher recipient's acknowledgement form? That they use the voucher only for themselves, notify the AEL grantee if he or she is receiving vouchers from other programs, enter the team's ID into his or her GED account, give the AEL grantee permission to view testing information, or that they notify the AEL grantee if they do not show up on testing date.
E is the answer that has been given.
Correct. And just remember, you do need to develop a form for each recipient to sign, and that they acknowledge that what they must do in order to participate in the program. An AEL instructor or other assigned staff member must help the recipient register for the HSE test online to ensure that the recipient enters their name and not someone else's, that the test is scheduled within 30 days based on the availability of test dates, and the unique team's ID is entered into the appropriate field when registering for the test. Or is it B and C, or both A and C?
Getting mostly D's, but we got a couple E's and the B and C option. So I guess that'd be D.
Right. So the answer is D. It's both B and C. All of the following must be confirmed before releasing a voucher, except that the recipient has transportation to the testing center, that the recipient was determined test ready using an assessment tool, an HSE subsidy program acknowledgement form was signed, a GED account was created, the team's ID was entered into the GED account, and or the AEL grantee was given permission to view test information in the GED account.
Looks like A is the answer of choice.
Correct. Okay, and last one, AEL grantees must develop a standard operating procedure for implementing the HSE subsidy program that addresses which of the following elements: eligibility determination, the process for distributing vouchers, and verification and reconciliation of voucher usage, none of the above, or all of the above.
Looks like E.
Correct, all of the above. Okay, so thank you again for joining us. This last slide just gives you some emails.
Maria, we had one question come in.
Oh, okay, sure.
When will the vouchers be available for grantees and subrecipients?
I do not have a definite date for that yet. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. And then do we have a use by deadline or no distribution date yet?
Currently, the letter has August 31st of this year, but like we said before, if that changes, we will let you guys know as soon as possible and update the letter.
Okay. And then we just have a lot of thank yous, great information. Great job. Okay, I think that's about it. Thank you, ladies.